Hi, Amp Honors Program. I'm here today for another advisory board member profile with Dr. Greg Thompson.
Welcome to another presentation from the CV Academics Foundation, home of the Amp Honors Program.
The first thing I was interested in your written answers that you got to me was, you mentioned you moved from rural Nebraska to the largest city in Wyoming, and you went to med school in Colorado and Denver area, like Aurora, I believe is the town that University of Colorado's in, and then now you're in La Crosse. Can you pick a favorite? Can you pick maybe a least favorite? Do you remember enough about them, or just maybe some pros and cons of each?
They all had their really good moments. So Western Nebraska, very small, very rural, a town of 400 people. The class I was in, we had 16 students in our class. That was the biggest class in the school, so it was very small. I love the outdoors. There couldn't be a better place to be outdoors, and it was just, for me as a boy growing up there, it was just awesome. Loved every minute of it. Then we moved to Wyoming. That was a tough move for me because I was in high school at the time, just going into my junior year of high school. And it was a big transition. And it's kind of funny, you go to the biggest city in Wyoming and it's 50,000 people, which for most people is pretty small. But coming from a town of 400, it was a big change. And we graduated more kids in that class. We had about 610, I think, that we graduated, which is bigger than the town that I came from. And then going to the University of Wyoming, that transition was much smoother. And that's where I really learned to love Wyoming. And again, the outdoors, hunting, fishing, hiking, and grew to love Wyoming. And then went to Denver to medical school. And so there I was finally truly in a big city. And Denver was great. It's big. Even back then it was big. But the key thing there, that's where I met my wife. And so that was the high point of the 4 years in Denver. That's where I met my wife. And then we came back to Wisconsin and middle of Minnesota and then La Crosse. And La Crosse here has been kind of just a great mix. The outdoors, the river, the bluffs, the hunting, hiking, biking, out on a kayak in the river. And then a great place for my wife and I to raise our family. We have 2 boys, and it's been a really nice place to be.
Yeah, I'm glad you like La Crosse at least. That's the only one I can speak to, but I also enjoyed La Crosse. So two boys you mentioned, how old are they?
Boy, you're putting me on the spot. 32 and 30.
Okay, so they're to the point where the age doesn't really matter anymore. You're not really keeping track.
Yep. And one of them is just started his surgical practice. He went to medical school, surgical residency, and a minimally invasive surgery, bariatric surgery fellowship. And the other is currently a 4th-year medical student and interviewing for residencies now.
Wow. So you rubbed off on him pretty well, I guess.
Yeah,
it's kind of. Is your wife in medicine too?
She actually is.
Of course.
She is a nurse. She's an RN. It's pretty funny. We actually met though playing softball. It had nothing to do with being in the hospital, except it was a hospital league. So it's pretty funny. My son too wrote on his residency applications. He came from a medical family, and we even have a dog that's a therapy dog. So kind of all the way through.
Wow, just helping people all around. I see it. Okay, I'm jumping all the way down now to the 3 things most people don't know about you. You listed that you completed an Olympic distance triathlon. 1, that's incredible. 2, and you mentioned someone who didn't swim a lap for exercise until his 40s. So you didn't do the triathlon until after your 40s, I'm assuming? When did you do it?
Right, 50s. Let me see, when did we do that? I must have been, I don't know, I'm going to guess around 54, 55.
Wow.
So that I did it. So yeah, it was awesome. So, and the swim, I'm not a swimmer. And again, this is part of that rural environment where I grew up. We did not have a pool in the town where I grew up. So Fortunately, my parents still made me take swimming lessons, so I had to drive to the closest town with a pool. But I needed glasses as a kid, so when I swam, I couldn't see anything, so I was never a big fan of swimming. But then to do this triathlon, which for whatever reason I always wanted to do, I had to swim. But my just word of advice for those who don't swim and want to do a triathlon, swim in the ocean, because the salt water keeps you more buoyant. So it is a much better, much easier way to get it done.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Where was it? Where was the triathlon that you did?
It was in Hawaii. It's called the Lava Man.
Okay.
So it was spectacular.
Man, I ran, you what?
And I survived. So
That's the most important part. One thing I noted that you didn't include in your three things most people don't know about you is that you were quoted in one of my favorite books ever, Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. And so I knew about you before I was even a part of CVA or anything like that. I read this book, I think last fall,
okay.
and I joined AMP this past spring. So last fall being 2019 now, I guess it's winter, but Atul Gawande is like one of my favorites. So I'm assuming you talked to him, correct? Like you,
Yep.
man, I'm jealous.
Yeah. So it was because of here at Gundersen, our CEO at the time, Jeff Thompson, I got to know Atul Gawande through a conference called the IHI, the Institute for Healthcare Improvement. And one of our medical vice presidents as well, Dr. Michael Dolan. And they were talking about end-of-life care. And it really is, I think, unique here at Gundersen how we our end-of-life care. And so they suggested that Atul Gawande have a conversation with me. So we have the conversation set up. We probably spent over an hour on the telephone one evening, and he got his notes done. And then we had another follow-up conversation, and he got his notes done. And then I had a chance to meet him at the IHI conference, probably a year or so after the initial conversation. And the initial publication was in the New Yorker magazine when he wrote an article, and then he continued with some of those notes in writing Being Mortal.
Yeah, it was a life-changing book for me.
Yeah, so yeah, it is an eye-opening book. Yep.
Yeah, and it was cool to see. I mean, at that time, it was just a lacrosse doctor to me, but now it's someone I know personally, and it's really cool to see some people changing lives.
Wow. Yeah, thank you.
All right, last thing that I wanted to talk about, you mentioned the most important skill you developed on your path, and you said that the skill was facilitation, and I thought that was such a unique answer, and a good one too. Like, it's not something I would have necessarily thought about right away. Can you maybe like expand on that at all? Like maybe places or times that you've seen that being put to use?
Yeah, and I will talk. I think that has really, for me, become clear in leadership, in that many times I think in leadership, people have this kind of perception that it's what I can do as an individual, what I need to do, what I can lead. But if you can work with others around you so that you find a common pathway, and now instead of one person working towards that goal, you have a whole team working towards that goal, you can accomplish so much more and so much faster that you really can accomplish great things and impact lives and make a difference. Talk about, I think, the one thing for me that has probably been one of the highlights of my career. One is the Atul Gawande book. The other is an award that we received from the ACGME in 2016. And they gave out, it was their inaugural Baldwin Award, which is an award for medical education, for humanism in medical education. And so there were about 690 healthcare organizations that sponsored medical education at that time. They invited 60 organizations to apply for this award. And out of those 60, they interviewed 6 places. And then from those 6, they chose 3 winners, and we were one of the winners. We won what was called the small division. But the key thing about that award, it was a reflection of your culture. It was a reflection of who you are. It wasn't so much what you've done or what you've published or how much grant money you have. It was a reflection of who you are. And I think that's really that facilitation. We're working with program directors and residents and faculty to say, this is the culture we want. This is how we want to have things structured and build in how we treat people and promoting that humanism in medical education. So I think that, for me, that was a key role in facilitating where we want to get to as a Department of Medical Education.
That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that with me. Congrats to you for that. And that's obviously a great honor to receive that award and receive that recognition. And you're much deserving, as I'm sure you are.
Very kind. So thank you.
So I did just kind of come up with one last kind of segment, I guess. So you're a pulmonologist and a critical care specialist, and I'm sure you've gotten this question a lot over the last year or so. And you're on the front lines of a lot of the hospital side of things with all the COVID. And how do you think this entire pandemic, that kind of stuff, has changed your specialty, like moving forward? Once we kind of get past this, is there anything that might get changed long term?
I'm going to go back. I think a couple of things that come to mind for me, and as the director now of medical education and the responsibilities there, I don't have as much responsibility in the hospital.
Okay.
But still, for me, it's seeing the impact on our residents. And the key thing I would say is, I think, a much better recognition of the emotional toll that a pandemic has inflicted, I think would be the right word, upon our frontline healthcare workers. And my hope is that this will bring much more attention to the emotional well-being of clinicians and nurses and other people, respiratory therapists, social workers, and so forth that are on that front line of care. And I think what has compounded this is that because of the pandemic and the restrictions on visitors, that many times it's been our residents who have been they've been that emotional connection for patients who unfortunately are dying of COVID and for their families. And so I think it's brought a much better recognition to the emotional toll that is there in the work that we do. Mm-hmm. But it also now has created, I think, significant opportunities for us to work and to address that and to realize the impact of care, the impact of the care that has been provided has to families. So it's not just the treatment, and it's not just what you can do medically, but it's also that emotional support that is provided to patients and families. So I think that is, in my mind, one of the big changes we will see moving forward, as well as the rapidity of change that, we all hear how we're resistant to change and nobody likes change. We've had more change in medical care and medical education in the last 10 months for us than anybody ever could have imagined. So we can do change. We have the capacity to do it. And when we need to, we do it. And so I think it'll help us both in that emotional support for each other in the work we're doing, and then in the ability to change what we're doing.
Yeah, both great thoughts. And I think both things can be kind of expanded to a lot of like the general population in a lot of ways. Obviously emotional, mental health side of things, and then just the adaptability across all business, all work, all that stuff. It kind of just forced everyone to be adaptable. So hopefully that'll be a good thing. That'll be a good thing moving forward. All right. Well, Dr. Thompson, it was an honor to talk to you today, and we hope to see you on the site. Any students, I don't want to speak for you, but any students can reach out to you with any questions they might have, and then you'll get back to them whenever you have time in that busy schedule of yours.
You bet. That sounds good, Riley. Just for people to realize, yep, sometimes I'm not the quickest on the email, but eventually I'll get there.
Exactly.
So,
That's all that matters. Well, thanks so much. It's nice to meet you, Dr. Thompson.
great. Thank you, Riley. Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This has been a presentation of the CV Academics Foundation, home of the AMP Honors Program.